Danforth was totally unstrung, and the first thing I remember of the rest of the journey was hearing him lightheadedly chant an hysterical formula into which I alone of mankind could have found anything but insane irrelevance. It reverberated in falsetto echoes among the squawks of the penguins, reverberated enough through the vaultings ahead, and thank God, through the now empty vaultings behind. He could not have begun it at once, else we would have not been alive and blindly racing. I shudder to think of what a shade of difference in his nervous reactions might have brought. South Station under, Washington under, Park Street under, Kendall, Central, Harvard. The poor fellow was chanting the familiar stations of the Boston-Cambridge tunnel that burrowed through our peaceful native soil thousands of miles away in New England. Yet to me the ritual had neither irrelevance nor home feeling. It had only horror, because I knew unerringly the monstrous, nefandous analogy that suggested it. We had expected, upon looking back, to see a terrible and increasingly moving entity, yet the mists were thin enough, but of that entity we had formed a clear idea. What we did see, for the mists were indeed all too malignly thinned, was something altogether different, and immeasurably more hideous than detestable. It was the utter objective embodiment of the fantastic novelist's thing that should not be, and its nearest comprehensible analog is a vast on-running subway train as one sees it from its station platform, the great black front looming colossally out of the infinite subterraneous distance, constellated with strangely colored lights and filling the prodigious burrow as a piston fills a cylinder. But we were not on a station platform. We were on the track ahead as the nightmare plastic column of floated black iridescence oozed tightly onward through its 15-foot sinus, gathering unholy speed and driving before it a spiral, re-thickening cloud of the pallid abyss vapor. It was a terrible, indescribable thing, vaster than any subway train, a shapeless congeries of protoplasmic bubbles, faintly self-luminous and with myriads of temporary eyes, forming and unforming, as pustules of greenish light all over the tunnel filling in front that bore down upon us, crushing the frantic penguins and slithering over the glistening flora that it and its kind had swept so evilly free of all litter. Still came that eldritch mocking cry, Technically Lee, Technically Lee. And at last we remember that the demonic Shoggoths, given life, thought, and plastic organ patterns solely by the old ones, and having no language save that which the dot groups expressed, had likewise no voice to save the imitated accents of their bygone masters. 12. Danforth and I have recollections of emerging into the great sculptured hemisphere and of our threading our back trail through the Cyclopean rooms and corridors of the Dead City. Yet these are purely dream fragments involving no memory of volition, details, or physical exertion. It was as if we floated in a nebulous world or dimension without time, causation, or orientation. The gray half-daylight of this vast circular space sobered us somewhat, but we did not go near those cached sledges or look again at poor Gedney and the dog. They have a strange and titanic mausoleum, and I hope the end of this planet will find them still undisturbed. It was still, while struggling up the colossal spiral incline, that we first felt the terrible fatigue and short breath which our race through the thin plateau air had produced. But not even the fear of collapse could make us pause before reaching the normal outer realm of sun and sky. There was something vaguely appropriate about our departure from those buried epics. For as we wound our panting way up the 60-foot cylinder of primal masonry, we glimpsed beside us at a continuous procession of heroic sculptures in the dead race's early and undecayed technique, a farewell from the old ones written 50 million years ago. Finally, scrambling at the top, we found ourselves at a great mound of tumbled blocks, with the curved walls of higher stonework rising westward, and the brooding peaks of the great mountains showing beyond the more crumbled structures toward the east. The low Antarctic sun of midnight peered redly through from the southern horizon through rifts in the jagged ruins. And the terrible age and deadness of the nightmare city seemed all the starker by contrast with such relatively known and unaccustomed things as the features of the polar landscape. The sky above was a churning and opalescent mass of tenuous ice vapors, and the cold clutched at our vitals, warily resting on the outfit bags to which we had instinctively clung throughout the desperate flight. We rebuttoned our heavy garments for the stumbled climb down the mound and the walk through the eon-old stone maze to the foothills where our airplane waited. Of what had set us fleeing from the darkness of Earth's secret and archaic gulfs, we said nothing at all. In less than a quarter of an hour, we had reached the steep grade to the foothills, the probable ancient terrace by which we had descended. I could see the dark bulk of our great airplane amidst the sparse ruins on the rising slope ahead. Halfway uphill towards our goal, we paused for a momentary breathing spell and turned to look again at the fantastic Paleologian tangle of incredible stone shapes below us. Once more outlined mystically against the unknown west. As we did so, we saw that the sky beyond had lost its morning haziness. The restless ice vapors having moved up to the zenith, where their mocking outline seemed on the point of settling into some bizarre pattern which they feared to make quite decisive or conclusive. There lay now revealed on the ultimate white horizon beyond the grotesque city a dim, elfin line, a pinnacle of violet. Whose needle-pointed heights loomed dreamlike against the beckoning rose color of the western sky. Up towards the shimmering rim sloped the ancient tableland. The depressed course of the bygone river traversed it as an irregular ribbon of shadow. For a second we gasped in admiration at the scene's unearthly cosmic beauty. And then vague horror began to creep into our souls. For this far violet line could be nothing else than the terrible mountains of the Forbidden Land, highest of the Earth's peaks and focus of Earth's evil, harborers of nameless horrors and arcane secrets, shunned and prayed to by those who feared to carve their meaning untrodden by any living thing of Earth, but visited by the sinister lightnings and sending strange beams across the plains in this polar night. Beyond doubt, the unknown archaic type of that dreaded Kadath in the cold waste beyond abhorrent name, whereof unholy primal legends hid evasively. We were the first human beings ever to see them, and I hope to God that we may be the last. If the sculptured maps and pictures in that pre-human city had told truly, these cryptic violent mountains couldn't be much less than 300 miles away. Yet nonetheless sharply did their dim elfin essence just above that remote and snowy rim. Like the serrated edge of a monstrous alien planet about to rise in unaccustomed heavens. Their height, then, must have been tremendous beyond all known comparisons, carrying them up into tenuous atmospheric strata peopled by such gaseous wraiths as rash flyers have barely lived to a whisper of after unexplainable falls. Looking at them, I thought nervously of certain sculptured hints of what the bygone river had washed down into the city from their accursed slopes, and wondered how much sense and how much folly had lain into the fears of those old ones, who carved them so reticently. I realized how their northerly end must come near the coast at Queen Mary Land. For even at that moment, Sir Douglas Mawson's expedition was doubtless working less than 1,000 miles away, and hoped that no fate would give Sir Douglas and his men a glimpse of what may lie beyond the protecting coastal range. Such thoughts formed a measure of my overwrought condition at the time, and Danforth seemed to be even worse. Yet long before we had passed the great star-shaped ruin and reached our plane, our fears had become transferred to the less vast enough range whose recrossing lay ahead of us. From these foothills, the black ruin-crusted slopes reared up starkly and hideously against the east. Again reminding us of those strange Asian paintings of Nicholas Roerich. When we thought of that damnable honeycomb inside them, and of the frightful amorphous entities that might have pushed their faultedly squirming way even to the topmost hollow pinnacles, we cannot face without panic the prospect of another sailing by those suggestive skyward cave mouths, where the wind made sounds like an evil musical piping over a wide range. To make matters worse, we saw distinct traces of local mist around us, several of the summits. As poor Lake must have done when he made that early mistake about volcanism, and thought shiveringly of that kindred mist from which we had just escaped, of that and of the blasphemously horror-fostering abyss whence all vapors came. All was well with the plane when we clumsily hauled on our heavily flying furs. Danforth got the engine started without trouble, and we made a very smooth takeoff of the Nightmare City. Below us, the primal cyclopean masonry spread out as it had done when we first saw it, so short yet infinitely long, a time ago. And we began rising and turning to test the wind for our crossing through the pass.